Imagine a train packed with children, the elderly, and entire families, all being taken to one of the most feared places in history, Auschwitz, a Nazi extermination camp where over 1 million people were murdered. That day, no one had a chance to return. No one, but one boy survived. And it wasn't because of luck, not because of help. He fell. He fell because of stone in his shoe. What you're about to hear is not just another story. It's one of the most unbelievable accounts of World War II. And the most incredible part, it really happened. Before we continue, like this video and comment below which city or country you're watching from. This story deserves to be heard around the world. Now take a deep breath and come with me. It was 1944. I was 11 years old, and I had a stone. Yes, a stone. One of those small, annoying ones, invisible from the outside, but that hurts with every step you take. I don't even know how it got in my shoe. Maybe during the rushed run when the soldiers shouted "Rouse" that morning. Or maybe before, when I hid behind the well and saw Mr. Adler, our neighbor, get hit in the head with a rifle butt. It's funny, or tragic, how sometimes the smallest thing, a stone, can change everything. That morning, I woke up to the dry sound of boots pounding the hard ground of our street in Lodz. It was the kind of sound that makes you hold your breath, even while you're still asleep. My mother pulled me by the arm and pushed me against the wall. She whispered, "If they tell you to run, run. If they tell you to be quiet, be quiet. If they tell you to get in. And never, ever let go of my hand." But I let go. When the truck stopped in front of our house, the shouting began before anyone even understood what was happening. To the train, to the train. It's strange how they always screamed, as if the urgency was ours, like it was some kind of honor to board. My mother didn't cry. Her eyes were dry, like the cracked soil of the farms that no longer existed. She gave me a slice of hard bread and said, "Don't eat it now. You'll know when it's the right time." I never ate that bread. At the station, the line of people seemed endless. Men, women, the elderly, children, all with hollow eyes, as if the world had ended and no one had told them. The train arrived like an iron monster. Black, steaming, spitting smoke that burned the eyes. It was a freight car. No seats, no windows, no space for hope. They shoved us inside like cargo. There were screams, cries, and in between, a desperate silence. That was when I got separated from my mother. Someone pushed me to the back of the car. She tried to pull me back, but our hands couldn't reach. "Emil!" she shouted. It was the last time I heard my mother say my name. Inside the darkness, the heat was suffocating. The smell of sweat, urine, and fear mixed until you couldn't tell where a body ended and despair began. And the stone, that damn stone was still there, inside my shoe, stabbing the same spot on my heel, as if reminding me that I could still feel, that I was still alive. Every step I took in that cramped space, every attempt to move, was like a dry stab in the foot. But I didn't want to remove it. That pain was mine. It was real. And somehow, it kept me conscious while everything else felt like a fated nightmare. The trip lasted days, or hours, or weeks. Who knows? When the train finally stopped, we didn't know where we were. But we knew what was coming. We were part of an extra group. The leftovers. The ones going straight to the line. No selection. No tattooed number. No second chance. The door of the car slammed open. The daylight blinded us for a moment. When our eyes adjusted, we saw the dogs, the shouting, the uniforms, the guns. Auschwitz. But I didn't go in. I tripped because of the stone. And when I fell to the ground, others trampled over me. They screamed for me to get up, but I couldn't. A guard looked at me, then at the rest coming down, and scoffed, as if he didn't want to waste time with one more fallen child. He yelled at those around me to keep moving, then turned away, and left me there. From the ground, I saw the last people walk through the gate. The gate with the phrase that today sounds like a sick joke. Arbeit macht frei. Work sets you free. But there was no work for those that day, and I was left behind. There, with the stone still in my shoe. That stone, that damn stone, was what saved me. Or maybe it was what doomed me to remember. I stayed there, lying on the cold ground, trying to understand why I was still breathing. My ribs ached from being trampled, and my heel throbbed. Not from a kick or a guard, but from the stone. The stone that made me fall. After a few minutes, maybe hours, an officer came back with 2 men. They dragged me by the arms like a sack of empty potatoes. They said something in German that I didn't understand, but they didn't need to translate. I was a leftover. Those who went through the gate never came back. I was taken to another section, an annex, rejected for death, as some of the older prisoners used to say. They put me to work cleaning the floors of an outer wing where German mechanics worked. Maybe they mistook me for someone from another transport. Or maybe they just left me there because I had fallen out of the line and no one wanted to take responsibility for the mistake. And that's how it began, how I started scrubbing dried blood from a floor that never stayed clean. They gave me a shallow bowl of soup, if it could even be called that, water with potato peels, and a piece of hard bread, which I ate in silence, staring into the hollow eyes of other prisoners. Children were rare, and those still there didn't last long. One of them was named Ilsa. She was smaller than me, maybe 8 years old, but had the eyes of an old woman. Those eyes still haunt me. Ilsa told me she lost her parents in the train car when typhoid fever broke out. She said she survived by eating crumbs and pushing bodies out of the way just to breathe. She spoke softly, almost in whispers. She was afraid of everything, but when she spoke of her mother, her voice trembled differently. She used to sing a song every night, she said once. Even when we were hungry. Du bist mein Herz. You are my heart. Ilsa curled up in the corner, clinging to an old rag she said belonged to her mother. She would sniff it every night, as if hoping some trace of perfume might still be there. I took care of her, shared my soup, told stories I made up myself. Stories where the train took children to a secret school, where they learned magic, where the war was just a bad dream. But there was no magic in Auschwitz. Days became weeks, and winter came. Have you ever felt cold rip through your bones from the inside out? It's not like the cold we know. It's a frozen silence that eats at you from within, as if your soul were being frozen, inch by inch. The shoes I wore, if they could be called that, had fallen apart. The stone was gone at some point, but the heel, it bore the mark, as if my body refused to forget. One night, Ilsa coughed up blood. She tried to hide it, quickly wiping it with her mother's cloth. But I saw it. The next morning, she didn't get up. I shook her, called her, whispered to her, but she only smiled, with cracked lips and eyes glowing in a strange way. "Mommy's singing again," she said. "Can you hear her?" I didn't hear anything, but I nodded, because that was all I could do. She left that morning, in my arms. No screams, no commotion, just silence. And the cloth. Her cloth. I kept it. To this day. In the camp, losing someone was like losing a button from your shirt. You missed it for a while, but eventually you got used to it. That's how we survived. By not feeling. But with Ilsa, it was different. Maybe because I never had a sister. Or maybe because, even in the middle of death, there was still something pure in that little girl. She reminded me that we were human, even there, and that was dangerous. After Ilsa died, I stopped speaking. Not by choice, but because something inside me simply shut off. My tongue still moved. The words still existed inside me, but they wouldn't come out, as if speaking was a risk, as if saying anything might remind me that there was still life and hope, and that in that place was almost a sentence. Days passed like that. They changed my assignment. Now I cleaned the corridors where the guards ate. Yes, the same ones who beat us, now laughing loudly as they stuffed themselves with meat and fresh bread. Sometimes they threw scraps on the floor just to see who would kneel first. They liked that. It was like a game. The quickest to crawl for crumbs earned the right to keep breathing. I learned not to run, not to look, not to show. There was an unspoken rule. Those who showed pain lost. Those who showed longing bled. Those who showed soul died. Then, one day, something strange happened. One of the soldiers, young, skinny, with a face that looked more scared than cruel, dropped a handkerchief on the floor, right near me. I could have ignored it. It was just a dirty piece of cloth, but there was something about it. A smell. Lavender. The same lavender my mother used on the living room pillow. My heart beat so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I looked at the handkerchief, then at him, and for a second, our eyes met. He said nothing, but he didn't look away. With trembling hands, I picked up the handkerchief and handed it to him. He accepted it, without words, just a nod. The next night, a small potato appeared under my blanket. Do you know what a potato is in Auschwitz? It's a declaration of war against hunger. I don't know if it was him, but from then on, now and then, a piece of bread, a wrinkled apple, even a sip of sour milk would show up in my corner. Maybe he was trying to save me, or maybe he was just trying to save himself. But in that reality, a small gesture was a scream. A fragment of humanity was more dangerous than a weapon. And the truth is, when everything around you is dead, even a glance can hurt. One day, I woke up to a different sound. The siren wasn't like the others. It was longer, more confusing, corridors being emptied in a rush, guards shouting incoherently, the sound of airplanes, distant explosions. I looked up at the sky for the first time in weeks. It was gray, but not the usual gray. It was an anxious gray, a gray that sensed something. Rumors began to whisper among the prisoners. They're coming. The Russians, they're coming. But what sounded like hope turned to fear. The Germans began burning files, destroying papers, and transferring prisoners in a hurry. They called it evacuation, but we knew what it was, the death march. I was placed in a group, a convoy. We would march inland, on foot, with no food, in the cold. And that's when I realized that the train that almost killed me would not be my end. But this walk could be. Bare feet, skinny bodies, winds sharp as razors. Every step was a challenge. Every night, a silent lottery. Those who fall stay, and those who stay never rise again. I saw bodies freeze, sitting down like stone statues. I saw friends fall asleep and not wake up. And in the middle of all that, I missed the stone, that annoying pain, that certainty of being alive, that damn reminder that, for some reason, I was still walking. Today I wonder, did the stone really save me? Or did it just push me forward? While everyone else stopped, I don't know how many days we walked. My legs moved out of inertia. My mind, out of denial. The cold hurt so much that I got used to it. Do you understand that? There comes a time when even pain becomes routine, like just another weight on your body. A background noise, like the constant crying of someone who no longer knows how to stop. During the march, I learned that silence was also a form of resistance. Don't complain. Don't ask. Don't fall. Each day, the group got smaller. Some died standing, stumbling until they could no longer get up. Others simply threw themselves to the side and let go. Yes, I wanted to stop, to let myself fall into the snow and disappear. But something kept me standing. It wasn't strength. It wasn't faith. It was something smaller, more primal, maybe an instinct, maybe a stubborn trace left in me by the stone. One night, we slept in an abandoned barn. It was the first time I had slept under a roof in months. The smell of rotting straw reminded me of my grandmother's house. There, she used to store potatoes in old baskets. I closed my eyes and imagined I was there, with her, that I was whole, that my mother would walk through the door and give me a piece of warm bread. But then a moan cut through the silence. It was a man. He couldn't have been older than 40, but he looked 80. He was trying to breathe, but the air wouldn't come. His eyes were wide open, begging for help with him, but no one moved. Fear was greater than compassion. I just watched, paralyzed, feeling the cold air hit my face as he slowly died. That's when I understood. Death was no longer an event. It was a travel companion. It was with us, hand in hand. And when it didn't come, that was strange. The next morning, they put us back on the road. We walked for hours until something changed. First, the sounds. Quickened footsteps. German orders shouted, more desperate than usual. Then, gunshots. And then, silence. A heavy silence, like the sound before a thunderclap. And then, they appeared. Soldiers, but not our captors. They were different. Different uniforms. Strange faces. Faces without smiles, but also without hatred. One of the older men fell to his knees and shouted in Yiddish. They're Russians. They're Russians. The guards had fled. They left us there, without food, without direction, with nothing. And us, we didn't know what to do. Freedom. That word felt like a distant concept. Almost absurd, as if someone had said the sky was now green, or that the sun would stop rising. I sat on the ground, leaning against a tree. The cold was still there, but now it didn't hurt. The truth? I didn't feel anything. No joy, no sadness, no relief. It was as if my soul had stayed somewhere along the way. Maybe with Ilsa, or with my mother, or with the stone. I was taken with others to an improvised shelter. Russian doctors, dirty blankets, hot soup. The first spoonful burned my tongue, but I cried anyway, not from the pain, but because it was the first warm thing to touch my body in months. There, in that corner, with my lips burning and hands trembling, I realized I was alive. But what do you do with that now? Being alive, after everything, it was like waking up from a coma, but without knowing who you are or why you're still here. At the Russian shelter, no one really knew what to do with us. We were children, but also, we weren't anymore. Not after all that. They gave us food, clothes, even makeshift toys made from pieces of wood. But they couldn't give back what we truly lacked. And maybe no one could. A man in a suit with an American accent showed up a few days later. He said he was part of a humanitarian organization, that he would take some of us to recovery camps. Safe orphanages, he said. I was one of the chosen. I was put on a truck with 6 other boys. Most didn't speak, and the ones who did just mumbled incoherent things. During the ride, I rested my forehead against the window. Outside, Europe was still burning. Destroyed houses, muddy roads, silent silhouettes with sacks on their backs, trying to find meaning among the ruins. At the orphanage, everything was too clean, too organized, as if they were trying to convince us that none of it had really happened. But memory doesn't have a delete button. I remember the white room, the bed with iron sheets, and how I couldn't sleep. The mattress was too soft, the silence too disturbing. No moans, no screams, no gunshots. The absence of pain was a screaming presence. I started having nightmares. I'd wake up shouting my mother's name, or Ilsa's. A nurse named Anna would come to calm me. She had warm hands and a soft voice, as if every syllable carried care. One day, she came into the room while I was on the floor, curled up, my fingers bleeding. I had dug my nails into my heel. She knelt beside me, held my face, and asked, "What are you looking for?" And I whispered, "The stone, the one that saved me." She cried. I didn't understand why. The following week, she brought me a gift, a small cloth pouch. Inside, a single gray pebble. "You don't need to feel pain to remember you survived," she said. I kept that stone, and in a way, I kept her too. Anna helped me speak again, to form sentences, to write my name, to understand that my story wasn't just pain, but also resistance. She taught me a new word, witness. You're not just a survivor, Emil. You're a witness. One day, people will deny that all this ever happened, and you'll be there to tell them. I didn't respond at the time, but those words marked me more deeply than any number they could have tattooed on my arm. Eventually, I was transferred to an international adoption program. They said I had a better chance in America. I was sent to New York in 1947. New York was another planet. Noise everywhere. Food in abundance. People laughing out loud. Streets that lit up at night. But none of it touched me. I was adopted by a childless couple. They were kind. They meant well. But they didn't know what to do with a boy who screamed in his sleep and cried at the sight of fresh bread. It took me months to accept a hug, years to smile without guilt. And even then, I was never whole. The truth? I learned to live between two worlds. The world before the stone, and the world after. In America, I discovered something strange. People wanted to help, but they didn't want to know. They preferred to see my face clean, my hair combed, my grades at school. But if I started to tell them what I had seen, their eyes changed. They looked away. They got teary or empty. It was as if, by hearing my story, they risked staining their own clothes. So, I went silent. Again, I became a good student. Disciplined. Polite. But inside me, there was a trench, and in there the war never ended. Years passed. I went to college. Worked at a public library. Books became my refuge. Stories I could close whenever I wanted. Characters who died, but came back in the next read. For a long time, I avoided getting involved with people. I was afraid to love and lose again. Afraid to grow attached and watch everything fall apart. But then I met Rachel. She walked into the library asking for a book about the Warsaw Ghetto. She looked into my eyes in a way no one else did. As if she knew, as if she recognized something the world had forgotten. She was the granddaughter of a survivor. And unlike most people, she wanted to listen. We talked for hours that day, and in the following weeks. She asked me questions no one else dared to, but she asked with tenderness, like someone touching a scar, not to open it, but to understand it. With her, I spoke again, truly, without metaphors, without softening the horror. I told her about the train, about the stone, about Ilsa. Rachel listened in silence. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she smiled sadly, but she never looked away. We got married 2 years later. She taught me something simple and brutal. That love doesn't heal everything, but it gives meaning to what can't be healed. Over time, I began visiting schools, telling my story to young people who thought war was just movie stuff. I show them the stone. Yes, the stone is still with me. I keep it in an aged wooden box, along with Ilsa's cloth and the lavender-scented handkerchief. 3 fragments of hell. 3 proofs that life insists, even where it shouldn't bloom anymore. Once a girl asked me, "Do you forgive?" I went silent, took a deep breath, and replied, "No, but I keep going, because forgiveness isn't an obligation, but continuing is a duty." Today, in my 80s, my steps are slow, but each one still echoes the memory of those left behind. Sometimes I wake up in a sweat. I dreamed of the train, of the smell of iron, of my mother's voice. But then I look to the side, see Rachel sleeping, and I remember that the past wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. Historians seek me out, documentarians, curious minds. They want dates, names, numbers, but I give them something the archives don't have. The sounds, the smells, Ilsa's little hands, the taste of watery soup, the silence of children who died standing. They take notes wide-eyed, and I say, looking firmly, the day no one cries hearing this anymore, that will be the day it can all happen again. Sometimes I'm asked, what was left of you after all that? And I answer, without hesitation, a boy with a stone in his shoe who never stopped walking. No matter how many years go by, everywhere I go, from schools to conferences, from interviews to memorials, that stone is still with me. Not in my shoe, but in my soul. It reminds me that life is made of accidents, of detours, of falls, and that often it's in the stumble that we find survival. I could have died on that train, could have been chosen, could have entered through the gate like so many others. But I fell, and they didn't want to wait for a limping boy. Whether that's luck or fate or just a glitch in the system of death. I don't know. I only know that I'm here. And that is enough. When I look back, I don't see numbers. I see faces. My mother squeezing my hand. Ilsa singing softly. The young soldier smelling of lavender. Anna holding my face with warm hands. Rachel, eyes steady, listening to me like someone witnessing a miracle. They live in me, in my wrinkles, in my silences, in the pauses between one word and the next. The other day, a 12-year-old boy heard me tell my story and raised his hand. But did this really happen? The room fell silent. I looked at him and said, yes, and that's why you must never let it happen again. He looked down, fidgeted with his sneaker, and I realized he was trying to imagine what it's like to have childhood ripped away by a shout, by an order, by a train car. But it's impossible, and maybe that's for the best, because the hell we lived through should never fit inside a child's imagination. It should only fit in the memory of those who survived, and in the conscience of those who live after. Today, when I go to sleep, I close my eyes and sometimes still hear the trains. But I hear something else too, a soft song, in Yiddish, from a girl with old eyes, singing to no one else but me. Du bist mein Herz, you are my heart. And then everything goes silent. And in that silence, I remember that I wasn't saved by luck, nor by miracle, but by a stone, and by the decision to keep moving forward, even while limping, not because I was strong, but because there was no other choice. Maybe in the end, that's what survival is. To keep walking even when the ground hurts, even when the world makes no sense, even when there's no one left to wait for you at the next station. You walk because someone has to remember, And today, that someone is me.